It didn't come with a big stage, flashing lights, or a farewell tour announcement. There was no countdown, no grand speech in front of thousands of fans. Instead, the news came quietly, almost the way he always lived his life. At 84, Bob Dylan is saying goodbye. For decades, he was never the kind of artist to explain himself. He didn't chase attention, and he rarely gave people the answers they wanted. That's part of what made him so different. While other stars told their stories openly, Dylan let the music speak, and even then, he left room for mystery. So when word started spreading that he had decided to step away, it didn't feel like just another retirement. It felt heavier. Final. Fans around the world paused. Some didn't believe it at first. After all, this was Bob Dylan, the man who kept touring year after year, long after others had stopped. The man who never really said goodbye to anything. He just kept moving forward, quietly, on his own terms. But this time was different. There were small signs leading up to it. Fewer appearances. Less movement. A slower pace that only longtime fans seemed to notice. Nothing was officially announced at first, but something in the air had changed. And then came the message. Not a long speech. Not a press conference. Just a simple, recorded message. His voice older now, softer, but still unmistakably his. In it, he didn't try to explain everything. He didn't go into long details about his life or career. That wasn't his way. But what he did say was enough. He talked about time, about the road, about knowing when it's time to step off it. And just like that, it became real. For many people, Bob Dylan wasn't just a musician. He was a voice tied to moments in history. His songs were there during protests, during change, during times when people didn't know how to put their feelings into words. Somehow, he always did. That's why this goodbye feels so personal to so many. Because it's not just about a man stepping away from music. It's about the closing of a chapter that has been open for over half a century. But to understand why this moment matters so much, and why he made this decision now, you have to go all the way back. Back to a small town. Back to a boy who didn't yet know he would change the world. Long before the name Bob Dylan meant anything to the world, he was just Robert Zimmerman, a kid growing up in a quiet part of America. He was born on May 24, 1941, in Duluth, Minnesota. It wasn't a big city filled with opportunity or music history. It was cold, quiet, and far removed from the kind of places where stars were usually made. Not long after he was born, his family moved to Hibbing, a small mining town where life followed a simple routine. There wasn't much excitement there. Days were predictable. People knew each other. Life moved slowly. But inside that small town, something was already starting to grow. As a kid, Robert didn't stand out in a big way. He wasn't the loudest or the most attention-seeking, but he had something else. Curiosity. He listened. He paid attention. And most importantly, he listened to music. The radio became his window to a much bigger world. Through it, he heard sounds that didn't belong to Hibbing. Blues, country, early rock and roll. Music filled with emotion, stories, and voices that felt alive. Artists like Little Richard and Elvis Presley weren't just performers to him. They were proof that something bigger existed outside his small-town life, and he wanted to be part of it. As he grew older, that interest turned into action. He started playing music himself, picking up instruments and forming small bands during his teenage years. They played at school events, local gatherings, nothing big, but enough to give him a taste of performing. Even then, there was something different about him. While others were just enjoying the moment, Robert seemed to be searching for something. It wasn't just about playing songs. It was about finding a voice, a way to say something real. But there was a problem. Hibbing wasn't the place where dreams like that could grow. No matter how much he played, no matter how much he listened, he knew deep down that staying there would mean staying small. And that wasn't what he wanted. By the time he reached his late teens, that feeling had turned into a decision. He needed to leave. Not just physically, but creatively, personally, completely. He enrolled at the University of Minnesota, but it didn't take long for him to realize that college wasn't the path he was looking for. What mattered to him wasn't in classrooms. It was out there, somewhere beyond what he already knew. And around that time, something else changed. He started moving away from the music he grew up with and discovered something deeper. Folk music. It wasn't flashy. It wasn't loud. But it told stories. Real stories. And that's when everything started to shift. Minneapolis wasn't New York, but for Robert Zimmerman, it was a step closer to the life he wanted. It was there, in the neighborhoods around the university, that he found the folk music scene. Small coffee houses filled with quiet crowds, simple performances, and songs that carried meaning instead of just sound. This was different from the rock and roll he had been playing. Folk music felt honest, and it connected him to something deeper. One name kept coming up again and again: Woody Guthrie. Guthrie wasn't just a musician. He was a storyteller of the people. His songs spoke about struggle, work, life, and truth in a way that felt raw and real. For Robert, discovering Guthrie was like finding direction. It wasn't just about making music anymore. It was about saying something that mattered. And with that realization came another decision. He needed a new identity. Robert Zimmerman didn't feel like the right name for the path he was choosing. It sounded tied to the life he was leaving behind. So he changed it. That's when Bob Dylan was born. The name wasn't just a label. It was a signal. A fresh start. A step into the unknown. And once that step was taken, there was no turning back. By 1961, Dylan made the move that would change everything. He went to New York City. He didn't arrive with fame or connections. He didn't have money or a clear plan. What he had was determination, and a deep belief that this was where he needed to be. New York was overwhelming, fast, crowded, unpredictable, but it was also alive with music. Greenwich Village, in particular, became his home. It was filled with artists, musicians, and people chasing something bigger than themselves. For Dylan, it felt right. And there was one more reason he came. Woody Guthrie. At the time, Guthrie was in a hospital, seriously ill. Dylan went to visit him, not as a fan chasing fame, but as someone who wanted to learn, to connect, to understand. Those visits mattered more than anything else. They shaped him. He started performing in small clubs, building a reputation slowly. People began to notice. Not because he was polished, but because he was different. His voice wasn't perfect. His style wasn't traditional. But his words, they stayed with people. Before long, that quiet momentum turned into something bigger. He signed his first record deal. His career had officially begun. But even then, no one, not even Dylan himself, could fully see what was coming next. Because the boy from Hibbing was about to become something much more than a musician. He was about to become a voice the world would never forget. When Bob Dylan arrived in New York City in 1961, he wasn't walking into fame. He was stepping into uncertainty. He had no real safety net. No big connections. No guarantee that anything would work out. But he had something else. Focus. Greenwich Village became his world almost immediately. It was a place where artists gathered, where music lived in small rooms and dimly lit cafes. You didn't need to be famous there. You just needed something real to say. And Dylan did. He started playing wherever he could. Coffee houses, tiny clubs, anywhere that would let him take the stage. The crowds were small, but that didn't matter. What mattered was the reaction. People listened. Not just casually, but closely. There was something about the way he performed. His voice wasn't smooth or traditionally good. It was rough, sometimes uneven. But it carried emotion. It felt honest in a way that polished voices didn't. And his lyrics, they were different. While others sang familiar songs, Dylan was writing, observing, turning everyday life into something deeper. Around this time, he continued visiting Woody Guthrie in the hospital. Those visits weren't about publicity or recognition. They were personal, quiet, important. Guthrie became more than an influence. He became a kind of guide, even without saying much. Dylan absorbed everything. The way songs could tell stories. The way they could reflect real life without pretending. That idea stayed with him. Word about him started spreading through the village. Slowly at first. Then faster. People talked. Have you heard this guy? He's different. That kind of talk matters in a place like that. Before long, it reached the right ears. In 1961, he signed his first record deal with Columbia Records. It was a big moment, but not a loud one. His first album came out in 1962. It didn't explode. It didn't turn him into a star overnight. But that wasn't the point, because what came next would. Dylan kept writing, kept observing the world around him, and as the early 1960s moved forward, that world was changing. There were protests, movements, tension building across the country, and without planning it, without aiming for it directly, Dylan's music started to match that moment. Songs like "Blowin' in the Wind" didn't feel like entertainment. They felt like questions. Questions people were already asking, but didn't know how to say out loud. And suddenly, the quiet kid from Minnesota wasn't so quiet anymore. By the mid-1960s, everything had changed for Bob Dylan. He was no longer just another artist in Greenwich Village. His name had spread far beyond New York. His songs were being played everywhere. But what made his rise different from other musicians was the timing. The world was going through something. The civil rights movement was growing stronger. The Vietnam War was becoming more controversial. Young people were starting to question authority, tradition, and everything they had been told to accept. And right in the middle of all that was Dylan. Songs like "The Times They Are A-Changin' didn't just describe the moment, they felt like part of it. Like they belonged to the streets, to the protests, to the conversations people were having every day. Without trying to, he became a symbol. People started calling him the voice of a generation. But that label came with pressure. A lot of it, because once you're seen that way, people expect something from you. They expect you to represent them, to speak for them, to stay consistent. And Dylan didn't like that. He never wanted to be put in a box. Never wanted to be responsible for speaking on behalf of millions of people. He was just writing songs. But the world had turned those songs into something bigger. Interviews became uncomfortable. Questions became repetitive. What do you stand for? What message are you trying to send? And the truth was, he didn't always have clear answers. Or maybe he did, and just didn't want to explain them. That tension started building. Fans loved him, but they also expected him to stay the same. To keep writing protest songs. To keep being that voice they believed in. But Dylan wasn't interested in staying the same. And that led to one of the most shocking decisions of his career. In 1965, Bob Dylan did something that changed everything. He went electric. It sounds simple now, but at the time, it was a big deal. Up until then, he was known as a folk artist. Acoustic guitar, harmonica, simple, raw performances. That was the image people had of him. And suddenly, it was gone. At the Newport Folk Festival, he stepped on stage with an electric guitar and a full band behind him. The reaction was immediate. Some people cheered, but many didn't. There were boos, confusion, even anger. Fans felt betrayed. To them, it wasn't just about the sound. It felt like he was turning his back on what he represented, on the movement, on everything they believed he stood for. But Dylan didn't stop. If anything, that reaction pushed him further. He kept playing electric, kept changing his style, kept moving in a direction that felt right to him, even if it upset people. Because for him, music wasn't about staying comfortable. It was about growth. Still, the backlash wasn't easy to ignore. Concerts became tense. Crowds shouted at him. Some accused him of selling out. And through all of it, he stayed mostly silent. He didn't explain himself, didn't defend his choices in long speeches. He just kept going. Until suddenly, he didn't. In 1966, Dylan was involved in a motorcycle accident. The details were never completely clear, and over time, the story became almost myth-like. But what mattered was what came after. He disappeared. No big announcements. No dramatic statements. He just stepped away. 4 months, then years, he stayed out of the spotlight. No constant touring. No chasing attention. It was a complete shift from the fast rise he had just experienced. Some people thought it was because of the accident. Others believed it was something deeper. The pressure. The expectations. The feeling of being watched all the time. Maybe it all became too much. Whatever the reason, that moment marked a turning point. Because for the first time, Bob Dylan chose distance over fame. And it wouldn't be the last time he made a decision like that. After stepping away from the spotlight, Bob Dylan didn't come back the same person. That wasn't surprising. Nothing about his career had ever followed a straight line. When he returned to music, it wasn't with a clear announcement or a dramatic comeback. It was quieter than that. He released new songs, new albums. But the sound kept changing. One moment it felt like country, then blues, then something harder to define. For fans, it could be confusing. They were used to trying to understand him, but now it felt like every time they got close, he moved again. And maybe that was the point. Dylan never wanted to stay still long enough to be fully understood. In the late 1970s, he made one of the most unexpected shifts of his entire career. He turned toward religion. It wasn't a small influence either. It was a full transformation. His music became deeply spiritual, filled with themes of faith, belief, and personal struggle. Albums like Slow Train Coming showed a side of him that many people didn't see coming. Some fans embraced it. Others didn't. There were people who felt disconnected from this new direction. They had followed him for his earlier messages, his protest songs, his raw storytelling. Now, the tone had changed completely. And once again, Dylan didn't explain himself. He didn't try to convince anyone to understand. He just kept going. That's how he always worked. Through the years, his career became a pattern of reinvention. He would move into a style, stay there just long enough to explore it, and then move on. Never settling. Never staying in one place long enough for the world to fully catch up. At times, it felt like he was pulling away, not just from fame, but from expectations altogether. He would disappear for stretches, then return with something new, different, unexpected. It made him harder to define, but it also made him impossible to ignore. Even when critics didn't understand what he was doing, they paid attention. Even when fans felt confused, they stayed curious. Because with Dylan, there was always the feeling that something meaningful was happening, whether you fully understood it or not. And beneath all the changes, all the silence, all the distance, there was something steady. He never stopped creating. He never stopped searching. Even if the world didn't always follow him, he kept moving forward in his own way. At a time when most artists slowed down, Bob Dylan did the opposite. He went on the road. And he stayed there. Starting in the late 1980s, Dylan began what would later be called the Never-Ending Tour. It wasn't officially named that by him, but it fit. Year after year, he kept performing. City after city, country after country. There were no long breaks. No clear stopping point. Just movement. For fans, it was something special. You never quite knew what kind of show you were going to get. Some nights were powerful, unforgettable. Other nights were quieter, more unpredictable. But that was part of the experience. Dylan didn't perform the same way every time. He changed arrangements, adjusted songs, sometimes even made them almost unrecognizable. It wasn't about repeating the past. It was about keeping the music alive in the present. As the years passed, something else became clear. He wasn't doing this for attention. There were easier ways to stay relevant. Bigger stages. More promotion. More visibility. But that wasn't his focus. The road itself seemed to matter more. Touring became a routine, almost like a way of life. A steady rhythm that kept him moving forward. While other artists slowed down with age, Dylan kept going, even into his 70s. Then his 80s. That kind of consistency is rare, but it also raises questions. What keeps someone going like that? Why not stop and rest? Why not step back and enjoy everything already achieved? For Dylan, the answer seemed simple. He wasn't finished. Or at least, he didn't feel finished yet. But even the longest roads have limits. And over time, small changes started to appear. Shows became fewer. Appearances became quieter. Nothing dramatic. Nothing officially announced. Just subtle shifts that longtime fans began to notice. The pace wasn't the same anymore. And for the first time in a long time, it felt like the road might actually be coming to an end. In the final stretch of his career, Bob Dylan didn't make a big announcement about slowing down. He didn't need to. The signs were there. You just had to look closely. The performances continued, but they felt different. Not weaker, but quieter, more controlled. There was less movement, less energy spent on anything unnecessary. It wasn't about putting on a show anymore. It was about presence. For longtime fans, this shift was noticeable. The voice had aged, of course. That was expected. But there was something deeper too, a kind of calm that hadn't always been there before. Less urgency, more reflection. He wasn't chasing anything anymore. And maybe that's what made these final years feel so different. There were also longer gaps between appearances. Tours became less frequent. Public moments became rare. But Dylan didn't disappear completely. He still recorded, still created, still found ways to stay connected to music, even if it wasn't as visible as before. And then, there was the message. It didn't arrive with a big announcement. No headlines at first. No dramatic rollout. Just a recording. His voice, older now, softer, but still clear. In it, he didn't go into long explanations. He didn't break down every reason behind his decision. That wasn't how he communicated. Instead, he spoke simply. About time. About the years spent on the road. About knowing when something has reached its natural end. It wasn't emotional in an obvious way. But if you listened closely, it carried weight. Because for someone who had spent a lifetime avoiding clear answers, this was as close as it got. Fans reacted quickly once the message spread. Some felt sadness, others felt gratitude, and many felt both at the same time. Because while the idea of Bob Dylan stepping away is difficult to accept, there's also an understanding that moments like this don't come suddenly. They build over time. And in those final years, the signs had been there all along. Quiet, subtle, but real. When Bob Dylan finally made it clear that he was stepping away, people immediately started asking the same question. Why now? At 84, it's easy to assume the answer. The natural end of a long career. But with Dylan, nothing was ever that simple. Because this wasn't just about getting older. It was about everything that came with it. For most of his life, Dylan kept moving. From small-town beginnings to global stages, from quiet coffeehouses to packed arenas, he never really stopped. Even when he disappeared for a while, he always came back. The road was part of who he was. Touring wasn't just a job, it became a rhythm. A routine that gave structure to a life that could have easily felt overwhelming. But time changes that rhythm. The body slows down. Travel becomes harder. The energy it takes to perform night after night starts to feel different. And while Dylan never openly talked about those struggles in detail, they were there. You could hear it in the voice. Older, deeper, carrying the weight of decades. You could see it in the way he moved. More careful, more measured. But even beyond the physical side, there was something else. Perspective. When you've spent more than 60 years creating, performing, and constantly evolving, there comes a moment when you start to look back. Not in a dramatic, emotional way, but quietly. You start to see the full picture. The early days in New York. The rise in the 1960s. The pressure, the backlash, the reinventions, the years on the road. All of it. And for someone like Dylan, who always kept a certain distance from fame, that reflection likely carried a different kind of weight. He never seemed interested in legacy in the traditional sense. He didn't spend time talking about achievements or trying to shape how people would remember him. But that doesn't mean he didn't think about it. Because at some point, the question becomes personal. Not what have I done, but what do I want to keep doing? And maybe, for the first time, the answer wasn't as clear as it used to be. There's also the fact that Dylan never liked repeating himself. Throughout his career, whenever something started to feel predictable, he changed direction. New sounds, new ideas, new approaches. But there are some things you can't reinvent forever. At a certain point, continuing might start to feel like repetition instead of growth. And that's something he always avoided. So the decision to step away might not have been sudden at all. It may have been building quietly over time. A realization that the road he had been traveling for decades had finally reached its natural end. Not because he had nothing left to say, but because he had already said so much. In his final message, he didn't use dramatic words. He didn't call it a retirement in a big, official way. He simply spoke about time, about knowing when to stop. And coming from someone who spent his entire life avoiding clear answers, that simple statement carried more meaning than any long explanation ever could. This wasn't a forced goodbye. It was a choice. A quiet, personal decision from a man who had spent his entire life doing things his own way. And maybe that's the real reason behind it. Not pressure, not expectation, just knowing it was time. It's hard to fully measure what Bob Dylan leaves behind. Not because there isn't enough to look at, but because there's almost too much. His career stretched across generations. From the early 1960s all the way into his 80s, he stayed present in a way very few artists ever do. Not always in the spotlight, not always understood, but always there. And his influence goes far beyond music. He changed the way songs could be written. Before Dylan, popular music didn't always focus on deep storytelling. Lyrics were often simple, direct, easy to follow. He made them more personal, more poetic, more open to interpretation. He showed that a song didn't need to give clear answers to be meaningful. Sometimes the questions mattered more. That idea shaped countless artists who came after him. You can hear it in different genres, different styles, different voices, but the influence is there. Even outside of music, his impact reached into culture itself. Moments in history became tied to his songs. Not because he tried to control those moments, but because his words fit them so naturally. And yet, despite all of that, Dylan himself remained distant from the image people created around him. He never fully stepped into the role of a public figure in the way others did. He didn't explain his life in detail. He didn't try to guide how people should understand his work. He left space. Space for interpretation. Space for mystery. And that's part of why his legacy feels different. It's not just about what he did. It's about what he left open. Now, with this goodbye, that feeling becomes even stronger. Because there won't be new tours to follow. No unexpected reinventions waiting around the corner. No quiet returns after long disappearances. This time, it feels final. But at the same time, nothing he created disappears. The songs remain. The words remain. And the impact doesn't fade just because he steps away. If anything, it becomes clearer. Because now, people aren't just listening in the moment, they're looking back at the full journey. From Robert Zimmerman in a small town, to Bob Dylan on stages around the world. It's a story that doesn't follow a straight path. It doesn't give easy answers. And it doesn't end with a loud, dramatic finish. It ends the same way it was lived. Quietly. On his own terms. So what do you think about his final decision? Let me know down in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe. We share real stories behind the biggest names you know. Stories you won't hear anywhere else. Thanks for watching. And I'll see you in the next one.